to say is, well, I guess for the recording, it might be handy if I just, while I talk, you guys, if you ever, when you do look at the recordings, it's nice to see those answers there, because you can check if you need to review something. But what we're going to do is we're going to work through some of these. And here's what is confusing. I know a couple of things. Alec, question? Number 8. That was one I skipped for right now. I can't remember it, and I don't actually want to do it yet today because it's over the top hard for where we're at. And but I can probably figure it out for. I mean, I can figure it out. If I have time, I'll figure it out for you. Okay. Otherwise, we'll just wait till tomorrow. So I wanted to say a couple of things. One thing that makes this hard is it's new and different. If you went to school when I went to school a long time ago, you would never have used a ratio table. But the ratio tables actually make it easier. I think when AMAC went to school, they never did this. And we talk about this all the time. At first, the ratio table is weird, but actually it really is powerful. And you can do a lot more without doing crazy decimal multiplication problems. The problem is when you go home, chances are, if you ask your parents or a sibling, the only thing they'll do is multiply decimal numbers by decimal numbers because that's the way they learn, which is fine. Except for that, I think if you can learn this, it might be more helpful, and then they can't really help you with this particular thing on what we're learning, unless they watch the video a little bit. But I bet a lot of parents do this in their head and they don't even know it. But it's hard for them to help you right now, so that could be frustrating. So my suggestion is you show them what you know, and it might make their life easier once you get good at this. Okay? So we're recording this. We're going to go through a few of these. So let's just pick a few. We did some of these already before. We did 1 and 2. And we did 3, right?
Yeah.
Should I redo 3?
No.
Yes. 3. Why don't we start with 3? And if you don't need it, you can just be patient for a minute. 3's it's kind of scrolling weird.
Yeah.
It's been doing that today. So let me use my mouse. 3's actually, whoa, stop. My smartboard's misbehaving today. Okay, so we're going to start with 3. Let's take the one thing out of the picture is tomorrow, instead of a quiz, I'm going to have it ready. I'm going to give it to kids that are ready. They can take it, and everybody else can take it as a practice quiz, like we did last semester. And then if you get an A on it, I'll do a quick check. And then you'll be excused from the quiz on Friday. I'll change the real quiz to Friday. And then you can have some free time. So if you're ready for the quiz tomorrow, I'll have it. But I think most people might need one more day of practice, and I'll give a practice quiz. So that should hopefully let you just relax today and listen and try to learn.
I think I might be able to be ready today if this helps me.
That's right. Absolutely. I think it might. So what I'm going to do is write the part in the whole here. And the part is 45, and we're trying to figure out 45 out of 80. What percent is 45 out of 80? And so the goal is to get the whole to be 100. I want 100 in the bottom. Eventually, I want to get that 80 to somehow become 100. That's my goal. I have to be creative sometimes. Okay, so one of the things we talked about was get to a multiple 100. If you can't, like, you can reduce sometimes, but reducing, this was one of the ones where we reduced, and it didn't help that much. So I'm going to just show you that again. A lot of people would say, well, I know 5 goes into both of these. And when we divide 45 by 5, we get a 9. And when we divide 80 by 5, we get a 16. Sarah, I'm wondering if you would see better today if you were sitting like across from Cooper. Would that be better? Or can you see? Okay, there. Okay. So 9 out of 16 is correct. It's not very helpful, though. It's not very helpful to get to 100 that way. So you don't have to erase it. You could just say, well, that didn't help me that much. Maybe you want to say, I don't want to use it. Let's try something else. How about just get to 100, 800, multiply by 10. That would give me 800 here. Then I would have to multiply by 10 here. Just 10. And that would give me 450. The reason that could be helpful is most people don't have any trouble getting from 800 down to 100. What did I have to divide by? 8, right? Yeah. And so here's the thing. If I divide by 8 down there, I have to divide by 8 up here. I've got my goal of 100 now. I made it. That's what I wanted. So if I can divide 450 by 8, I'm done. And you guys can divide 450 by 8. You might have to refresh your division, but that's actually great practice. So you take your 450, and you're going to divide it by 8. And so just ask yourself, how many times does 8 go into 45? So Maddie, why don't you do that for me? Well, what's a math fact that you know with 8? Can you count by 8s? Well, what's 8 times 5? Let's start with that. Well, will help. 40, right? Yeah. Okay. So, and if you did 8 times 6, you'd get what, Emma? 8 times 6. If 8 times 5 is 40, 8 times 6 would be 48, right? So you go beyond 45, right? So it can't be 6, it has to be 5. Okay, so 5 times 8. This is what some of you really need to practice, because this was one of those skills you did in elementary school. We don't really spend much time teaching this skill in middle school because we have to teach all these other things. You have to practice this by yourself. So when I subtract now, I get a 5 and I bring down the 0. And Emma just told me 8 times 6 was 48. So I'm going to put a 48 here, I get a subtract, and I get a 2. And so I know my answer is 56 and 2/8. So 2/8 simplifies to be, I can divide by 2, right? And I get 1/4. So my answer is really 56 and 1/4. Okay? So I could just say that right here, 56 and 1/4. I could also say it's 56.25. Either one of those is correct. Okay? Does that make sense? Katie? Catherine?
Well, I did mine a different way.
There's other ways to do it.
Where I just went from 80 to 40, and then I divided that in half, and then I multiplied it by 5.
Yeah, that works too. And you're getting the right answer.
Yeah.
Yes. So one thing I want to make sure you can do is explain your answer. Can you say it in a sentence? So one way to say this is 45 out of 80. 45 out of 80 is 56.25%. You should be able to say what your answer means. In other words, if you took a test and you got 45 right out of 80, how'd you do?
Not that good.
Not so good, right? In a 56, in a lot of classes, that percent is an F, right? But when you, a lot of times,
Pass or fail.
so here's the thing, when you get a test from your teachers, and they may be right, hopefully you don't see this kind of percent too often, but sometimes you do. Sometimes you just have it, that's where you're at. That is on the top of a lot of your papers, and you might not know how to convert those percents. You can practice that. It's just a division problem. All right, we just did a division problem in the end. So let's look at number 4. So number 4, we have the part and we have the whole. And the part is 30. What's the whole? What is it? 150. And I want the whole to turn into what?
100.
I want it to be 100, right? Because I'm looking for a percent. Whenever I'm looking for a percent, I want to get 100. What'd you do?
I multiplied by 2.
Okay, so that's the strategy to get to that. You can multiply it by 2, and you get 300 here. And 60.
And then you just divide it by 3.
Divide by 3.
300.
That one's way easier than the last one, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is 100, and that's 20. And we have a number without a fraction. So the answer is 30. You get better at it. 30 out of 150 is what? 20%. Okay. You did it a different way?
Yeah, except, well, it's a lot the same as past time, except we just switched the
Order?
multiplication and division.
Yeah, you can go different ways. How about you, Elizabeth?
Well, actually, I divided by 15 first.
Okay, I want to show that. So is it okay if I erase this and we'll look at one more way? It's recorded, right? So you could go back and forth, Allie. Okay, so we probably won't do all of them, but maybe you can show us what you did on the next one. So let's look at just Elizabeth's, just because we have time to do one more. So Elizabeth divided by, it was a little bit different than what I did, divided by 15. I like that, that's great. And that brings you down to 10, right? And this is 2.
And I times by 10.
Yeah, perfect. And you get 20 and 100. You still have 20%. No we didn't even do any decimal multiplying. Okay, we didn't even do fancy division, just doing some real common sense thinking. Okay, so Allie, let's try this one. So your part is what? Right, 25, and your whole is 125. What'd you do, Allie? Divided by 5? 5 and 25. Sure, multiply by 4, that's a good idea. So that gives you 20, and when you multiply by 4 down here, you get 100. 20% again. So the answer here is 20%, right? You're saying 25 is 20% of 125. Yes, and then AJ.
Is it okay that I'm writing all this down on my paper?
Absolutely, because I'm going to give you a practice quiz tomorrow. And if you want a blank, I have a couple extras you can try it yourself later.
Yeah, I just want to practice.
Yeah,
so
no, that's good. This is a good day to just write and record and ask questions, AJ.
All the time. You feel like one like this, like I mean, like when the number that to the left it goes into the number on the right. So can't you just do this like it goes into it 5 times?
Sure.
What else out of 100 goes?
Yes. Remember, you can use more than one strategy now that we've practiced them all. Excuse me. So let me just show you what AJ's talking about. Okay. He's saying he just realizes 25 goes into 125 and it reduces to be 1/5.
And I want to show my work.
That's okay, but AJ could just do this. AJ just knows it, right? So, I mean, if he wrote this down, it'd be great. But I have to say, if he just went from here to here without writing this, I would know exactly what he did. The advantage of writing this down is it sometimes slows you down just enough so you don't make a careless mistake. And if you do make a careless mistake, I can look at what you were doing and I can help you better if there's some little bit of work. But from there, he says, well, I know 1/5 is 20%. And he moves on. That's fine. That's another way.
I did another one.
What'd you do?
I did 125 times 4, 500, and then divide by 5.
Yeah. So you went to a multiple of 100. Last way here. So you went up. You multiplied by 4 and got 500 and 100. I would have actually, and then what'd you do?
Then I divided by 5.
And then you divide it by 5. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I think that's enough of that one. So 100 and we get 20 again. Okay? What I'd like to do is go to the other page, the other side, number 9, even though I didn't finish all of these. I can't remember. What time were we out of here today?
15.
15.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go to the other page, and then we can come back and finish these. The other side, I mean, problem 9, when we get to 9, because they're a little different. So when you look at these problems side by side, the wording's different. On the left side, you're trying to find out the percent. On the right side, you have the percent. So it's almost like going backwards. Allie. Okay, hold on. So what I would do is maybe copy 1 or 2
Yeah, like I was gonna copy like because I did the first one.
and then try to do the rest by yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, the other thing is, I'm going to go out of order. I'll have Allie help us do number 10. Then we're going to skip down to 12. It's a little bit easier. So when you're trying to find the percent, what's nice on this one is to put a percent and a total. And always ask yourself, what is 100% of 75? So that's what I would ask Allie. What's 100% of 75? 100% of 75. 75, right? It's just 75. Okay. So what did you do next, Allie?
Then I divided by 20. We got 1.75.
So okay, that works. It might be a little hard to divide by 20 without doing long division. Yeah, why don't we do something like that, divide by 5 or 10 first, something that's a little bit easier. If we divide by 5, for example, let's see how that looks. This gives you 20, right? And this is 15. And we want to get to 15 though, don't we? So the goal on this problem, I guess we should talk about that. Sorry about that. In the percent row, I want to get this 15 to be somewhere in the top row, in my percent row. Do you see the goal? But if you're at 20, actually, Allie, you didn't do it this way, and your way worked, but you could just divide by 2. Because 20 divided by 2 is 10%, right? What's half of 15?
7%.
7.5. And why is that helpful? What would you do next?
Well, you could go down to, you could do it in half, so that would be 5.
Yeah, do it in half again. Divide in half again. Divide in 2 parts. And you get a 5. And remember, think of that 7 and a half. You can think of it as $7.50. Or you could think of 7. I'm going to just do a little scratch work. You could think of dividing 6 by 2 and $1.5 by 2, because don't these two add up to 7.5? And it's easy to divide 6 by 2, 3, right? And dividing 1.5 by 2, 0.75. So then you can add those together and you get 3.75. So that's what goes here. So this is a harder problem, but now you have 10% and you have 5%, which together makes 15%. What do I do?
Add 3.75 to 7.5.
You do. You add those. So 7 and 3 make 10. And think of this as money. 50 cents and 75 cents. How much does that make? Like $1.25, right? So it'd be 11. Your final answer would be 11.25. That's still kind of a hard problem to start with, number 10. Write it down, and we'll do an easy one.
Oh, I get it now. Basically, what you have to do is you have to chop that 100% down.
Yes, exactly. You're starting with the 100% right here, and you're trying to get to the 15%.
So the top is always going to be 100.
So the top is all the different percents.
But like you'll always start with 100.
Always. Yeah, so let's slide down to this one here. Let's slide down to 12. Okay, watch me do 12. I have the percent and I have the total. And I ask myself, what is 100% of 110? 110, right. Okay, so Allie, what's 10% of 110? I'm asking her because I'm wondering if you did them all the same way. Did you? Oh, good. Okay. So for somebody else, like Faith, you were asking about this earlier.
It's 11.
Yeah, you just divide by 10 to get to 10%. So this 110 divided by 10 is 11.
Because 10 times 11 is 110.
Because 10 times 11, right, is 110. So now, Cooper, what would you do?
You'd multiply that by 2.
Yeah, because now our goal is to get a 20%. So just multiply by 2, double. So you get 20% is 22. Right, and for a lot of people that's harder. Did you have to do scratch work?
No.
Because you could do it in your head. So then I wouldn't change anything. So your final answer in a sentence should be, you could write it different ways. You could just say 20% of 110 is what? Is what? 22. But you could also say 22 out of, what was my total? 110 is 20%. You should be able to think of different sentence answers.
Did you say 22 is 20%?
Yeah, you could say 22 is 20% of 110. You know, when you get older, you have to go take all these standardized tests. And sometimes they'll say, which of the following, or circle all of the following that are true. And they'll say something 3 different ways that's correct. It's hard to do that if you don't practice it. Okay. Let's do one more. Let's try 20% of 85. So somebody I haven't heard from today. I have my percent and my total. I have 100% of 85 is what? Somebody new. Okay, Annalise. 85. Okay, good job. So then what's your next step? Okay, how about, can you do it in 2 steps or? Divide by 10, right. Divide by 10. So I'm going to divide by 10. And that's 10. 85 divided by 10. What's that? Watch this, Annalise. You have, sorry, I meant to write 80. If you have 80, and you want to divide that by 10, what's that? Okay, if you had 90, and you want to divide that by 10, what's that? So 85 is smack in the middle of those two numbers. So when I divide 85.10, it has to be halfway between 8 and 9. 8.5, right? Or if you remember, it's a power of 10. When you divide by 1 power of 10, your decimal moves, right? Okay. So how is that going to help you get to 20%? Times 10 by 2. And you get 20% of 85 is 17. That's your answer. Okay, now what I want to do, I want you to put your pencils down. I want to show you something different that's not on here. Aiden, it's on my desk, Cal. Yes, if it's easy for you. Yes, you can. Emma. Not yet. Okay, so don't write this down because it's not on your sheet. It might confuse you. But I'm going to change this problem a little bit. Because I want you to try the other ones and I don't want to do them all for you. So what if I change this problem? So we know this one, 20% of 85 is 17. Now I'm asking you what is 12% of 85. And here's the thing. If you know 20%, you could find 2%.
Divide by 10.
You divide by 10. Look who says that. The person that thought they were going to be so confused.
I was confused.
I know. And now you're not. Isn't that a good feeling?
Yes.
So divide by 10, right? So when you divide 17 by 10, what do you get? What do you get, Cooper? 1.7, right?
I'm catching on.
That's good. So why is that going to help me then, Faith?
Because then you can multiply it by, not 10, but by 6.
You could multiply by 6. What's another way?
But
You could add the 10 and the 2.
I think that might be easier for a lot of people.
actually, it is a lot.
If you just add these two, you get 12, right?
Yes.
Which means you'd have to add this and this.
Wouldn't that be? It'd be
Add the wholes, 8 and 1 make 9, right?
2.
Right. It is. Think of this as 50 cents and 70 cents. That's $1.20. So 10.2. You could do scratch work there. You could do it in your head. You could cross-check my work, right? So you know, check that I didn't make a mistake.
No, but I just did it in my head.
Or you could do what you said originally, multiply by 6. I think for some people that's more work, personally.
It is more work.
I think it's more work. Okay? So I wouldn't do it that way. I would do the yellow. I would add. So to get 13%, let me ask you this. If I change it again, can I get 1%?
Yes.
How do you get 1%?
Oh, never mind.
Do you have 10% somewhere? Look for 10% in the chart. So can you get from 10 to 1? You divide by 10. Right? 10 divided by 10 is 1. So then I would have to divide this by 10, right? Which would give me, if I divide by 10, that decimal has to go one more to the left, right? 0.85. And then I could get 13% because I have 12% and I have 1%. So you add the 12% to the 1%, you get 13%.
And that'd be
And add the 0.85 to that, right?
11.05.
And you add, you get 5 and 0 is 5. 2 and 8 make 10. Carry the 1. And you do get 11.05. Okay, so here's this. I'm not going to do it. I ran out of space. But if I wanted 18% now.
That's the 9. That's on the one that we skipped.
Say that again.
That was on the one that we skipped.
Right, but look at what you could do. You could do 20%, take away 2%,
Yes.
Or you could do 10%. You could do 10%. I want a different color. You could do 10% and through. Oh, well, you could do a better idea, 13, and then figure out 5% from 10% and add them together.
You could add a.
There's lots of ways to do it. You have to be creative. So what I'd like you to do is I'm going to stop this, or at least pause it, and I want you to try some of those other